Thank you for being here today. Those of you that do know me, my name is Julie Ward. I'm a plant-based nutritionist, health coach, and herbalist. So I'm so happy that you guys could be here for this presentation today. We're going to talk about plant-based nutrition and depression, a livable tale. This is pretty much my story. And at the end throughout, we're going to go through some of the science that actually proves it. So do you guys have a picture of this of yourself? Smiling from ear to ear. If not you, somebody you know, a kid, a niece, nephew. If you do, cherish it. So this was me at about 7, just all teeth most of the time, right? This picture quickly became this picture, though. At the same age, about 7 or 8, and all of a sudden, my smiles were half smiles. I became very frightened, very afraid, very scared little girl. And throughout my life, one of the things that was most interesting was I would go to church, and I hated going to Sunday school. I did not like going to Sunday school. I did not socialize well with kids. It just did not work for me. So my parents would go to sanctuary. I'd go to church. I'd promptly go sit in, excuse myself, and wander the halls of the church until service was over. And oftentimes I did this, and I'd be afraid and sad and maybe sometimes sniffling. Somebody might have said something that really hurt my feelings. And one time there was a woman named Miss Brown. She was the church financial officer and also in charge of the ushers. So she saw me wandering the church, and she was like, hey, you know, what's wrong? Why don't you come in and sit in the office? So I did, and I'd go in and sit with her and read a book or talk to her quietly. I was always just a very quiet little kid, very polite, never bothered her. I seriously did not want her to go tell my parents that I was ditching Sunday school. So I did my best to be quiet. And later on, what was so interesting about this is that I actually forgot that story. And after I got out of college, my travels moving through Africa, I did an art show in Chicago, and my father said, hey, do you remember Mrs. Brown? I was like, no, I don't. And she looked at me heartbroken. She was like, you really don't remember me? I was like, no, I don't. She said, you used to come and sit in my office every Sunday, a really unhappy little girl, but I'm so glad to see that you're okay. And then I was heartbroken because I didn't remember that, but when she told me the story, all those memories came flooding back, all right? And as I got older, I began to have that same kind of half-masked smile. I lived through life, and it was like, what am I doing here? I just felt really, really out of place. It was like, I must be in the wrong place, the wrong time, with the wrong people, the wrong family, on the wrong planet. This has got to end. What's my purpose and what's my point? And I often had times where I really wanted to die. I had many thoughts of death, many thoughts of death and leaving. Because what I would see in the mirror was this most of the time. So this is how I actually felt, very scared, very alone, terrified, wondering when it would all end. And one of the things that kind of really kept me here and kept me on the planet, well, 2 things. Even though I would miss Sunday school often, I would still go. I was still in a very church community. So my fear of killing myself and suicide and going to hell was just like, no, don't want to do that, right? So that was not going to happen. And then the other was my mother. I knew there's one thing I knew in life was my mother would do absolutely anything for me. And if I killed myself, I'd be killing her too. So I stayed. And this is my final mass. This is me at the end of high school, and this is it. This is the picture of me from here probably until right about now, which we'll go through. But it's that same half smile, that same, okay, I gotta take a picture, you know, permanent little smile coming. So one of the things was people are poison. So as that was my core belief. It was just like, people are poison, I'm gonna stay away from them. I detached, I went away to school, went away to Spelman, which should have been one of the happiest moments of my life, but it really wasn't. You know, just being in that setting and already being really, really afraid of people, I just kind of kept to myself most of the time. But I was there, I participated. I had moments of happiness. It just wasn't my baseline. So this quote, told by Shakespeare and Macbeth, Act 5, Scene 5. Life is a walking shadow, a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That was the quote that got me. So this was on my wall in my bedroom in high school. I took it with me to college. That was kind of my base. I was like, okay, I'm not weird. I'm not out here by myself. Somebody else believes the same thing. Oftentimes, you just want to know somebody gets you, right? Next to that quote, though, was the St. Francis of Assisi prayer, a prayer that said, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So these two were side by side most of my life. And to this day, when I read that, this particular quote, I was like, oh my God, somebody else feels the same way about life. And the reality is, I'm not the only one. When we talk about depression, most people actually believe that depression is, oh, I'm sad, I'm always crying, and granted, I was as a kid, but that's not actually the definition of depression. It's low or sad moods continuously for weeks at a time, loss of focus, the inability to really focus and get something done, and or recurring thoughts of death. So it could be any of these. And one of the major ones is also diminished interest and activities that used to be pleasurable. You don't want to do anything anymore. So the only things that I enjoyed doing growing up were the movies. I'd write and I read books. I didn't really go outside. I didn't really play. I didn't really do much else. But and they were very lonely, alone kind of things to do. I had to learn how to socialize. So when you talk about depression, what are some of the causes of depression? And it can be biological, psychological, it can be genetic, environmental, it could be brain chemistry, it could be brain disorders, and it also could be nutrition. It could be your environment. For me, a lot of my depression started with bullying. No matter where I went, most of the time, I was just not happy. Kids in groups, 1 or 2, 3, I could get along with 1 or 2 kids, but when the numbers got bigger, 5, 6, it became very difficult. And being 5'11", glasses and braces, and if you saw this particular picture, that one over there, that's the one picture that I could find like that, because I can tell you what I did was avoid all cameras for a very long period of time. Braces, glasses, and pigtails. That was it. Plus I've always been like 5'11" and tall, always at the end of the line, last name's Ward. There were so many things to pick. There were so many things to pick on me about. Always at the end, right? So when you talk about that, I also, though, believe it started with environment, but I believe our family has a genetic marker for it. So we've never been tested, but I've talked to my mother, and there have been times when she's told me, not to the very end, though, she didn't really tell me how depressed and how sad she was as a kid. I didn't know that growing up. My grandfather and I had comments. He made comments once or twice when I was young, and we lost one. This is a picture of my nephew. About 2 years ago, my nephew passed, and he was depressed. The official word is that accidental gunshot wound at his own hand. So we don't really know this, but there's so many things that I wish I'd had the time to really tell him about personality. And even standing here talking about it, it's really a very sad thing, because he's gone. He's literally not here anymore. There are things that we could not talk about in terms of personality, how to change your personality, and to know that life gets better. So Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you don't know him, he has a wonderful book called Supernatural out, and he's talked about personality traits, and I love the way he puts it together. So if you have a strong emotional reaction to something in your life, it creates emotional charge, and that emotional charge then creates a memory in your brain. So as you begin to think, you now begin to think into the circuitry of whatever that experience is, and you begin to feel within the boundary of that emotion. So that situation is now locked into your brain and also locked into your body, and it's in your subconscious. So everything you do and everything you think has a tendency to come from that space, which I know to be the truth from being a child. Now, something you can get out of and something I've worked very hard to let go of. So he also talks about how if you have something happens in your life, how many of you have had something that you've just been like, it's turned you upside down and you've just been really upset about it, right? We've all had that. And we have a mood. It's a reaction. We have a mood to it. If that strong emotional reaction lasts longer than 48 hours, it becomes a mood. If that strong emotional reaction lasts more than 2 weeks, it becomes a temperament. And if that strong emotional reaction lasts for years on end, it becomes a personality trait. So my introversion, impassivity, self-criticism, low self-esteem, not getting along with people, all of that created a very depressive personality trait. This was graduation from college. Should have been one of the happiest moments in my life, right? But it wasn't. It was a rough day. It was a very, very rough day for me. So there's a half smile. Does anybody notice anything about that picture? When I put it on there, I was like, oh my God. Can anybody see anything?
Everybody has a half smile.
Everybody has the same half smile. Everybody has that same half smile. Now part of that might be the sun, but that was our disposition. You know, and it's not things you don't know it when you're in it. You don't see it when you're in it. But everybody had the same half smile that day. Like I said, that was a rough day. I was probably not on my best behavior, and my family got the brunt of it.
Like, I'm so glad he's going out of college, you know.
Yeah, you should be happy. Everybody should be happy. Now, there are other pictures on that day where I was happy, but this is the shot right out of graduation. Degree in hand. Should have been like, yay, right? But I wasn't. So this is a quick stat. Does anybody, before I let you read it, can anybody tell me, if you haven't read it already, what do you think is the #1 cause of death for people 10 to 34?
Suicide.
Suicide. And it is also the #4 cause of death for people 34 and up, 35 to 54. Suicide. Does not have to be. 32 million people worldwide have been diagnosed with depression, and it's continually increasing. The other thing I thought was really interesting was that it causes a $1 trillion loss in the global economy from apathy, people not going to work, not able to do your job, not being able to focus. So the traditional explanation of depression is a serotonin deficiency in your brain. Okay, so the concept is your brain produces serotonin. And there's something called a monoamine oxidase, which is an enzyme that balances your brain chemistry, and it actually eats the serotonin. So people who have been depressed have been shown to have higher amounts of, and they call it MAO, higher amounts of MAO in their brain, which is why one of the things you'll get for depression is an MAO inhibitor, or an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake. Yeah, so, which allows you to increase more serotonin between your nerve endings and have serotonin last longer in your brain. The new research, which I'm so happy about, because it makes total sense to me in terms of intuition, is serotonin is actually produced in your gut. A good 90 to 95% of serotonin is produced in your gut, which means it's produced in your gut lining. There are nerve cells in your digestive tract that produce serotonin, and they're called enterochromaffin cells, also EC cells. They line your digestive tract, and they stimulate serotonin in 3 ways. One is through sugar. You know when you eat glucose, right? How do you feel when you eat sugar? Hyper, happy, right? Ready to go. So glucose, so it's stimulated by glucose. It's also stimulated by fiber. It can be stimulated mechanically. So once fiber moves through your digestive system, it actually produces serotonin. The other way is your gut microbes. And your gut microbes, all of these are the research is so fascinating, and it's so new, and it's going to be studied for years to come. But the gut microbes actually also help your EC cells produce serotonin. And they studied this in rats. They wanted to see the serotonin in mice that had gut microbes, and then mice that didn't have gut microbes. So the mice that had gut microbes produced more serotonin. Okay, so abnormal serotonin production, however, could be associated with gastrointestinal conditions, IBS, constipation, diverticulitis. So for me, it was constipation as a kid growing up. So that was one of the things that really, being from Chicago, loving the food, we ate everything. It was not necessarily a plant-based thing growing up, but it did not work, and my disposition did not make it any better. So this is a study that showed that there is evidence. They did a 1-year study, and they took 2 groups. They had a group of people with IBS, and they had a group of people with depression. And what they showed was that the group of people with depression within the year, the group of people with IBS within the year were significantly more likely to also be diagnosed with depression. And the reverse is that the people with depression were also significantly more likely to be diagnosed later on with IBS and gastrointestinal issues. So the proof is that there is a connection between the gut and the brain. And that 2/3 of that group were actually the gut-related issues started first. Okay. So this is me. This is my story of constipation, right? My daddy. So it makes total sense. This is my daddy. Again, this is no smile, right? So I was really upset. My normal bowel movement was once a week, maybe every 8 days, and we were eating. So meats, all kind of stuff. My mother was a fabulous cook. We were eating 2 meals a day at least, breakfast and dinner. So my father used to give me mineral oil before I would go to bed. Right, and I was like, ooh, that just tastes bad. But it was the alternative to what he told me. Now, at the kid time, I believed him, but he was like, if you don't take this mineral oil, I'm gonna have to take you to the hospital and they're gonna take it out with forceps. Take this. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, I guess I'll take that, right? So he'd give me 2 tablespoons of mineral oil, and in the morning I would be much easier to go to the restroom. But what was really true, and the research also showed that the prevalence of mood and anxiety disorder in people that are constipated is also much higher. So this is how the brain and the gut communicate. It's called the gut-brain axis. So there's a nerve called the vagus nerve. It is the largest nerve in the body, also known as the wanderer, the vagabond, right? It goes from your brain stem down into your intestine. This is actually the nerve that helps your intestines peristalsis and move the food through to come out. So this is the vagus nerve. So it's wonderful to see that the research now is proving what I felt as a kid, the intuition. So how it works, if your gut microbes are out of balance, it can produce low-grade inflammation in your system. Low-grade inflammation can become chronic inflammation, which then becomes a chronic systemic disease. That inflammation can also go to your brain. So it goes up and down, okay? Depression is often a sign of chronic inflammation. Based on the food I was eating that didn't work for me, didn't digest well for me, I was constantly producing chronic inflammation in my body. And also got depressed. So how does that happen? What do you eat? One high-fat meal can produce low-grade inflammation. So that's your burgers, that's all the fried food that you love and we love. I do it too, right? But if you're eating that constantly over and over and over again, that can produce chronic inflammation. The other thing is stress. Stress has been found to have the same prolonged psychological stress can activate the same pro-inflammatory pathways in the body. So stress in your brain, you ever had butterflies in your stomach? Right? You've thought about something to give you butterflies, and that continually happens over time. It can produce the same inflammation markers. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. Truth be told, preparing for this and preparing on stage, I get a little nervous, right? So I've been like, okay. So what they know psychologically is the association between gut microbes, digestive function, and mental well-being exists. It's there, and it's real. And it's going to be studied again for the next 10 to 20 years. So I'm really looking forward to further research. Poor diet is a risk factor for depression. Gastrointestinal disorders can be a precursor to depression. And a healthier anti-inflammatory diet may prevent depression, okay? Which has been my story, and we will get to that. One of the things, though, to avoid truly, and all the people that I work with in my 6-week plant-based program, we talk about one of the things you really want to give up is eggs. So arachidonic acid is an omega-6, and it attacks the body. It is a pro-inflammatory food. So our body actually has arachidonic acid, and it's one of the things that helps with muscle growth. And if we get an injury, you get an injury and your body you get a bruise, your body puts blood to it, that's your inflammation markers. That's your inflammation in your body, taking care of your body. I've had clients who've said to me, I said, look, just give up the eggs. And I had a client, she was in a 6-week program, she gave up eggs. Within 2 weeks of the program, she was like, after we got off her session, she texted me, she said, I forgot to tell you, I don't have any pain anymore. And she had arthritis, right? We were in the program to reduce her blood sugar. She's like, I don't have any pain. Oh my God. I made a mistake and ate a piece of cake that was made with an egg, and the next day woke up with pain in my knee. I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I looked at something, I was like, oh, I just ate an egg. So eggs are real. If you have arthritis, they are an inflammatory food immediately and constantly. So think about people that are eating a boiled egg every day, and not just one, but 2. So you've got high cholesterol markers also, and then you got the inflammation in your body. So just something, If you do nothing else, give up the foul. Immediately. That's the one thing to do. So we're talking about dietary fiber. So there was a study that was given, and this particular study was done, and they did a survey that showed, this was in the Nutrition Journal, by the way, and they did a survey, and they followed people to eating cereal, vegetables, and fruits. And what they came to ultimately was that that fiber was actually associated with a better mood, okay, and less depressive symptoms. That's really what they said. So more fiber, less depressive symptoms. So one thing to think about. Natural mood foods. So natural mood foods are foods that are higher in polyphenols. And polyphenols are those bright colored fruits, your blueberries, your raspberries, your blackberries. They're high in antioxidants, high in anti-inflammatory properties. And so this is another one that they've done the research, and it actually does help for cognitive disorders, okay? Vegans report less stress and anxiety than omnivores. So another study was done. She's laughing. You don't believe me? So this one, this was a study that was done. This is a survey study. And so a strict plant-based diet, their conclusion was a strict plant-based diet does not cause depression, and that giving up animal food may actually have better mood benefits, okay? So this is my story. So in 1987, I gave up meat. That was it. I was like, okay, I'm done feeling bad. I'm done not being able to poop. I want to go to the bathroom like everybody else, right? Little did I know that probably everybody else was going to the bathroom like I was. But I wanted to feel better, and I wanted to be able to move my bowels. So I gave up meat in 1987. In 1992, I gave up chicken, pretty much roughly there and abouts. And then in 2008, I gave up fish. So my fish story is that I was eating fish. I used to love to make this African dish with fish in it. And I would make that, and I cut up the fish. I get my fish downtown with all the chefs get their fish, beautiful fish. And I got to the last bite of the fish, and there was a tumor on the bone of the fish, probably half the size of my thumb. And I was like, okay, that's it. The waters are so bad. Our planet, we're killing our planet so much that our fish are sick. And this was supposed to be wild-caught, beautiful snapper that was wild-caught and, ready to go. But no, it wasn't. And then I began to think. I was like, all these chefs are in here buying their food at the same time, same place, serving it to people. But what they do is fillet it. So you don't see the bone. You have no idea if your fish is healthy or not, right? So there's another World Food Journal. So this is where we get into the food. So the World Journal of Psychiatry, they did a study, and they now developed something called the antidepressant food scale, right? Can anybody tell me, do you have any idea what you think would be the number one food? We're talking happy food, something you eat to just make you happy off the scale charts, not sugar, just the number one food that would have all the nutrients needed to prevent depression, make you feel good, happy mood food. Anybody?
Maybe like an apple.
Got an apple.
Some kind of flour.
Avocado.
You got a flour, like flour.
Edible, they're edible.
Edible flowers. You got edible flour. You got an apple.
Avocado.
You got an avocado.
Some kind of fruit.
Some kind of fruit.
That's a kale for everything.
Kale. Kale.
I would say some veggies. Yeah, some
Veggies. Let's see. Watercress.
You can see that coming.
Right? Not at all. So what they did was they studied food for there are 34 nutrients that your body needs that humans need for growth. Out of those 34 nutrients, there were 12 that also had antidepressant properties. So B9, which is folate, B6, B12, B1, which is thiamine, iron, HPA, DHA, omega-3s, magnesium, potassium, selenium, vitamin A, vitamin C, and zinc. So watercress, spinach, mustard, fresh herbs, chicory greens, collards, dandelion greens, all this you get in your local grocery store. This is not a list of foods you don't see or you don't have access to. And these are all in my smoothie every day. Watercress, spinach, mustards, fresh herbs, dandelion, collards. This is what I drink every day. Yes, ma'am.
What is a watercress? I have stumbled across a can of watercress. What is a watercress?
So watercress is a plant, and I'm talking about the leaves, the greens. Yeah, I think you're thinking about something else. So we're talking about fresh watercress. You might be talking about chestnut. Sometimes people get them mixed up. Yeah. So the fresh watercress is a green leafy, and you can get it in the grocery store. Sometimes it will come in a plastic bag with a root ball, which means you can actually plant it, which I've done. So you can take that and then plant it in the ground and grow your own watercress. Yes, ma'am.
What is pomelo?
Pomelo is the thing that I had growing in the back of my tree. It's a cross between a grapefruit and a lemon. It's sour as all get out, and it's huge. It's big, and it's... some people turn it into...
Just eat it.
Yeah, you just eat it. Lemonade, it's a fruit. You could do that, yeah. So foods that inhibit. Remember we talked about monoamine oxidase, that thing that eats serotonin? And people will take MAO inhibitors. You can actually eat foods that will inhibit that. They have natural properties that will help maintain the balance in your brain. Berries, apples, grapes, onions, green tea, spices. Oh, there's one spice that's absolutely fabulous. Sarah, it's, oh, there it goes. You can't really see it on the white, but saffron. So if you ever make quinoa, put some saffron in your quinoa. It will actually be like, oh my God, this is great. I feel so happy. I have a client that I did a 5-day plant-based challenge, and it was one of the recipes in the 5-day plant-based challenge. And she sent me something on Facebook. She's like, when are you going to do this again? Every time I do this, I think about you. Every time I eat saffron quinoa, I think about you. So this is another study, and I love this quote, and they put it in the Lancet, and they were talking about nutritional medicine as a mainstream in psychology, so psychiatry. So although the determinants of mental health are complex, the emerging and compelling evidence for nutrition as a crucial factor in high prevalence and incidence of mental disorders suggests that diet is as important to psychiatry as cardiology, endocrinology, and gastroenterology. Diet, and this is the new part. This is now nutrition and psychiatry. This is the new developments that are coming out. So you can feel better. I've done it. I know it's possible. These are the changes that I've had to make, I've had to go through. Part of it is, and all of this was a combination. Food was major for me, and food was the beginning. But I tell people all the time, invest in your health. If there is something you need to change, you can change it. You know, you might have to go through some ups and some downs with it, but food is major for your health. Gratitude, being happy, you know, saying you're happy. There's a trick. Get up in the morning and just say 5 things you're happy for. It could be, oh my God, I love my bed, you know, or I'm just glad I got new sheets, or, you know, whatever it is, that is going to create a chemical reaction in your brain and also in your body. Meditate. Meditate is the other one that creates a chemical reaction in your brain. And then changing thought patterns. You can't have a positive life with a negative mind, right? So as you begin to change your thought patterns, that also does it. And then getting out into nature, which I love. I go camping and go touch the trees and go say hi. This is me now. This is what I see when I look in the mirror now, not the other picture. All the time, smiling, happy. And I really love that and enjoy that this has been my story. And I'm here, and I'm still alive and kicking and ready for the next phase of my life. And it is possible, and it is worth doing and worth staying here. So if you ever know, we've gone through this, we talked about food, but if you know anyone that is having depressive episodes that are borderline suicidal, obviously go get them immediate help. Go get them immediate help, get whatever the medication is, take it so you can get your balance, and then start to look at your diet. I have a really good friend who had been vegan and decided that he wanted to eat meat again. And then as he ate meat, began to eat a lot of chicken. And somewhere the other day, had some dental work done, and then said to me, we were texting back and forth, and had some real negative comments. And I was like, hey, guy, let go of the monkey mind. What's happening? What's going on? He's like, I don't know. Lately, I've just been really depressed. Lately, something's really been bothering me. I made an appointment for a therapist, an emergency appointment, and I'm going to go. I was like, good, do that. You eating chicken? And he was like, yeah, I just made this huge chicken soup. I'm not going to give it up. I'm going to finish my chicken soup, right? I was like, okay. So I texted him. I was like, look at the arachidonic acid in chicken. You might want to give up chicken and eggs for a minute. because that's an abnormal behavior, right? So, yeah, it's diet and lifestyle. Whatever it is you're going to do. But I'm loving my life now and quite happy to be here and quite happy for the story. So, this is me. Thank you all for being here. So if you have any questions, everybody got a little sheet, fill it out. Please let me know if you have any comments. Were there any questions while there are people that are filling that out? Is there anything?